Why you can't find yourself, the Buddha's answer. Why can't we see ourselves? The world tells us that we must find ourselves, as if our true self is buried somewhere, waiting to be uncovered. But what are we really looking for? Most of us assume that beneath the changing moods, shifting opinions, and passing thoughts, there is something solid, a fixed identity, a core essence that defines who we are. We believe that we are a consistent I, the same person across time and circumstances. This is what we mean by a fixed self, the idea that beneath all change there is something unchanging, something that makes us us. But is this true? Imagine standing in front of a mirror. The face staring back at you looks familiar, yet it is not truly you. The reflection is just light bouncing off glass. It shows you a version of yourself, but it is not the same as the person who existed yesterday, last year, or even a moment ago. Social media makes this illusion even stronger. Online, we craft identities, carefully selecting what to show, what to hide, shaping a version of ourselves that may not match reality. We present our happiest moments, filter our faces, and refine our words to fit an image. But that image is not real. It is like a dream, vivid, convincing, but gone the moment we wake up. The Buddha described this illusion in many ways, comparing our mistaken perception of reality to a bubble, a shadow, a flickering lamp, a phantom, a dream. We mistake the stories we tell about ourselves for something solid, but they are only shifting appearances. Science reinforces this. The brain does not passively observe reality, it constructs it. Studies in neuroscience show that our sense of self is not a fixed entity, but a collection of changing processes. Memory, personality, even our sense of identity can shift depending on circumstances. People who suffer brain injuries sometimes wake up with a completely different personality, forgetting who they were. If the self were truly fixed, how could this be possible? Instead, the brain creates a sense of continuity for practical reasons. It simplifies the world, giving us a stable identity so that we can function. But this is just a useful fiction. The Buddha saw this long before modern science. All conditioned things are impermanent. That includes the body, the mind, and the very idea of me. A Greek philosopher, Heraclitus, once said, "You cannot step into the same river twice." The Buddha's insight goes even further. Not only does the river change, but the one stepping into it is also changing. You are not a statue, something fixed and unchanging. You are a river, flowing moment by moment, never the same twice. But because we crave stability, we resist this truth. We try to hold on to an idea of who we are, even as life keeps proving that nothing remains the same. This is why we suffer. We cling to an illusion, afraid to let go. But what happens when we stop grasping? What happens when we stop searching for a self that does not exist in the way we think it does? This is where the next question arises. Not just why we can't see ourselves, but why we keep chasing the illusion. The 3 traps that keep us stuck. If the self is not fixed, why do we cling to it so tightly? Why do we insist on defining ourselves even when life constantly shows that nothing stays the same? The Buddha taught that suffering arises not just from external difficulties, but from the way we grasp onto an illusion of self. An illusion reinforced by 3 powerful traps. These traps are not always obvious. In fact, They feel natural, even comforting. But they keep us searching for something that isn't there. The first trap is the storyteller in our head. From the moment we wake up, an inner voice begins narrating. This is who I am. This is my story. I have always been this way. We don't question this voice. We assume it tells the truth. But the Buddha once responded to a disciple's question about identity by turning it back on him, asking, "What do you think you are?" This response was not a rejection, but an invitation to look deeply at how we construct our sense of self. Modern psychology echoes this idea. Dan McAdams describes narrative identity, the ongoing story we tell ourselves to create meaning. But if we examine these stories, they are not as stable as they seem. We remember things selectively. We shape our past to fit our present. We tell ourselves we are kind, yet recall moments of cruelty. We believe we are strong, yet carry unspoken fears. If identity were truly fixed, why would we need to keep reinforcing it? Why would we need to remind ourselves of who we are? The second trap is the endless chase for the perfect self. We believe that somewhere ahead, a version of ourselves exists that is whole, free, and complete. And so we chase. We build, refine, improve, hoping that one day we will arrive at the destination where we finally feel enough. But the Buddha pointed to a simple truth. Suffering arises when we do not get what we crave. And we will never truly get the perfect self, because it does not exist. This illusion is everywhere. It fuels an entire culture of self-optimization, apps that promise productivity, books that promise transformation. We are sold the idea that happiness is just one more improvement away. Even philosophy warns of this. Seneca, the Stoic, once said that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. The suffering of the imperfect self is exactly this, imagined. It is the pain of believing we should be something other than what we are. But if we stop and ask, what is missing right now, in this moment? The answer is often silence. The final trap is the fear of letting go. Even when we glimpse the illusion, we hesitate. If we stop holding on to this identity, what remains? If we stop defining ourselves by titles, achievements, or failures, who are we? The Buddha once reminded a monk who clung tightly to his status that names and titles are nothing but sounds. But we invest deeply in these sounds. We attach meaning to them, believing that if we lose them, we lose ourselves. This fear runs deep. It is why we defend our opinions, even when they cause us suffering. It is why we struggle with change, even when change is inevitable. But holding on to a fixed identity is like gripping a burning coal. It does not protect us. It only hurts us. These three traps, self-narratives, the pursuit of an ideal self, and the fear of letting go, keep us searching for something that cannot be found. But if we are willing to look beyond them, something shifts. Instead of trying to build a self, we begin to see through the illusion of self. Instead of grasping, we start noticing. The next step is not about replacing one illusion with another. It is about learning to see clearly. Because when we stop chasing, stop clinging, and stop fearing, What remains is something far more real. How to see what's really there. Seeing reality is not about adding something new. It is about unlearning everything we thought we knew. The Buddha did not offer a doctrine to believe in. He offered a way of looking that cuts through illusion. But illusion is stubborn. It is woven into every moment of our lives. To see through it, we must shift our way of experiencing the world itself. The first shift is learning to press pause. This may sound simple, but it is one of the most radical things a person can do. The mind is like a river, always moving, always reacting. We feel anger, and before we know it, words have already left our mouth. We feel fear, and our body tenses before we even recognize the emotion. In these moments, we are not choosing. We are being pulled. But the Buddha taught a different way. Stop. Look. See. Instead of reacting, name it. This is anger. This is fear. This is sorrow. The Satipatthana Sutta describes this as the foundation of mindfulness. Not controlling thoughts, not suppressing them, but simply seeing them clearly. This alone is enough to loosen their grip. Neuroscientists confirm this. When we label emotions, activity shifts from the amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for automatic reactions, to the prefrontal cortex, where awareness and self-regulation occur. The feeling does not disappear, but it no longer controls us. And in that moment of seeing clearly, something profound is revealed. We are not our emotions. They come. They go. But they are not us. The second shift is embracing. I don't know. This is the opposite of what we have been taught. From childhood, we are rewarded for having answers. We build identities around what we know. We feel safe in certainty. But what if certainty itself is a trap? Zen masters offer questions with no answers. What was your original face before you were born? Without thinking, who are you? These questions are not puzzles to be solved. They are mirrors, reflecting the mind's deep discomfort with not knowing. And yet, modern psychology suggests that sitting with uncertainty rewires the brain. Instead of grasping for false security, we become comfortable with openness. This is what the Buddha meant when he taught not to cling to views. It is not about rejecting knowledge. It is about loosening the grip of rigid identity. When we stop demanding certainty, something unexpected happens. We become free. We no longer need the world to fit into our expectations. We no longer need to protect an idea of who we are. We can simply be. The final shift is understanding that we are the camera, not the photo. A camera takes thousands of pictures, but it is never any single image. It captures joy, sorrow, youth, old age, but it is not defined by them. We are the same. Our experiences change, our thoughts shift, our body ages. But beneath it all, something remains, the pure awareness that sees. The Buddha once gave the analogy of a chariot. If you take away the wheels, the axles, the seat, where is the chariot? It was only ever a collection of parts. The same is true of the self. There is no fixed entity, only processes coming together for a time. But this is not nihilism. This is freedom. If there is no fixed self, then there is nothing to defend. No identity to cling to, no past mistake that permanently defines us. We do not need to hold on to suffering, because it was never truly ours to begin with. To see clearly is not to become something new. It is to recognize what has always been true. And once we see it, we can never unsee it. But seeing is only the first step. What comes next is even more profound. The truth you already know, but keep forgetting. You have looked in every direction, through stories, through philosophy, through the mind's illusions. And still, the question remains, who are you? The Buddha's answer was unlike anything the world had heard before. He did not offer a definition. He did not say, you are this or you are that. Instead, he pointed to the space between thoughts, the silent knowing beneath all experiences. This is the truth we already know, but keep forgetting. There is nothing to find because there was never a fixed self to begin with. Imagine the famous ship of Theseus, a wooden ship that, over time, has every plank replaced one by one. When the last original piece is gone, is it still the same ship? Now, imagine that someone has collected all the discarded pieces and rebuilt another ship. Which one is the real ship of Theseus? This is the same paradox we face when we try to find a permanent self. From the moment we were born, every cell in our body has changed. Our thoughts have shifted. Our beliefs have evolved. The person you were 10 years ago is gone. The person you are now is already disappearing. Yet, something remains, a sense of continuity, a feeling of me. But is it truly a thing? Or is it just a story the mind tells? The Buddha compared this to a flame passing from one candle to another. Continuity without a core. We see a single fire, but it is never the same fire from one moment to the next. Even after seeing this, the mind resists. Why? Because truth does not make the journey easier. It only makes it clearer. Realizing there is no fixed self does not erase suffering overnight. It does not stop habits from returning. It does not prevent the mind from falling into old patterns. It is like learning to swim. At first, the body fights against the water, grasping for stability. But struggling only makes it harder. The moment you stop resisting, you begin to float. This is why practice matters. Seeing reality once is not enough. It must be lived. That is why the Buddha compared the path to crossing a river. You do not stand on the shore thinking about the other side. You step into the current, again and again, until one day, you are no longer struggling. So, where do you begin? Right here. Not in the past, not in the future, but in this moment. When a thought arises, ask, is this truly me or just something passing through? When fear appears, observe. Does it stay or does it fade? These small acts of seeing, repeated daily, reshape the way you experience life. You stop grasping at illusions. You stop mistaking the mirage for water. And as the Buddha reminded his disciples, the path is walked, not worshipped. The truth is not hidden. It is not far away. It has always been right here, waiting for you to see it. You were never lost because there was never a fixed you to find. The search for a solid, unchanging self is like trying to grasp water in your hands. No matter how tightly you hold, it slips through your fingers. Life moves, and so do you. Every thought, every emotion, every belief you once held has shifted over time, yet something remains: the awareness that sees it all. The Buddha did not give us a final answer to cling to. He pointed to a way of seeing that frees us from the need for one. When you stop trying to find yourself and instead begin to witness what arises and fades, you step out of the illusion of a fixed identity. Like the ship of Theseus, you are not defined by any single part, but by the continuous unfolding of experience. And in that realization, there is peace. Not because you have finally become something, but because you no longer need to be anything at all.